We actually had a conversation earlier. We were in a group, and we each come from different theological backgrounds that are important to each of us. But let me tell you what's more important than that. We, all three of us, believe that the thing that we most want to focus on, and we've devoted our lives to, and we want our churches to focus on, and this gives us great unity, is we want as many people as possible to come to place their faith in Jesus and then spend the rest of their lives becoming more and more like Jesus.
Yep.
And as a unity, there's not any better unity than that when it all boils down. So thank you, gentlemen. Rob, I want to ask, okay, we're going to be Rob, Robbie, and Bobby. Okay? Rob, number one here.
You good with that?
I'm great with that. That's fine.
Can you react to what Robbie Rogers just said?
Yeah, for sure. I'll face you as I'm doing it.
Yes,
that's helpful. I think what we as an audience identified with was the idea that in ministry, people think we're trying to do something that we are not actually trying to do. So when you gave the illustration of someone picking on your shoes, because it was, I guess, probably the politically correct brand or something like that nature, like all of our heads are shaking because we're thinking people in our congregations, and we're guilty of this ourselves, have reinterpreted what church is supposed to be about.
Yes.
And so what I loved about what you shared was you're saying, hey, we're trying to name what that is for us, and we're trying to steer people in other directions. And the other thing was, you're not afraid to say, bless you as you go.
Yep.
If your mission is not this mission.
Yes.
Because this is the mission God's called us to at our church.
Yep.
And bless you as you go. That was powerful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's one of the things that has been it's been the most helpful thing that we've done for pretty much for the last year. Our executive team, one of the questions when you're pastoring a church is, what's most important right now? What is God calling us to right now? And the drum that is we've just been beating this drum over and over and over again for the last couple of years is clarity. We need I need clarity. What is God calling me to do? What is God calling us to do? Where is God taking our church body? And as we've gained clarity, it's given us the ability to have loving conversations with people that are not aligned with where God is calling us. And it's okay. It doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean they're evil. It's just different. A lot of times we look at things and we go, well, this doesn't align with that, therefore it's bad.
Yeah.
Instead of just going, no, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just different.
Yeah.
And so, we've gained clarity on who we are, and God has called us, and that has enabled us to have some of those conversations and have the confidence to go, hey, we love you. God might be calling you to something else. We want to help you find that something else, because this isn't going to work.
And the real health of what you're doing as well is that you're not trying to accommodate them by somehow shaving things to make them stay.
Yeah.
You're very comfortable with, hey, if you don't want to be about being a disciple and making disciples, then and the way we're trying to do it, then it's okay.
Yeah.
And that's I just want to commend the strength of character, because that's part of an intentional choice that both of you have made. Mm-hmm. Now, do you want to add anything to that, just in terms of the choices that you guys have also made and the price you've paid for that?
Well, I will say this. What's interesting as I think about it is the people that have what we might see as other missions apart from disciple making would say that their motivation is discipleship. They'd say, my motivation is to help people follow Jesus. So they'd come up, they'd talk about the shoes. You ask them, why does that really matter? And they'd go to what they would frame as to follow Jesus in our day and time. We need to be clear what we're for, what we're against, and they go down this path. So we can have grace for where they're coming from. But what I hear you saying, and also the path that God has taken us on very similarly, is the more concrete and explicit we can get, the more it helps people understand and choose. And we've had a similar thing as people realize, okay, this is what we're really about. They've left and they've found other churches. And again, that's fine. There have been other people that have been drawn to our church And so that happens for us. It's taken a longer period of time. I think for you shared with me earlier, it was a little bit more like we had a new church almost in year one.
Yeah, there was a reset.
Yeah, a reset. For us, it's not been quite like that. It's been a little bit more 5-year period.
So let me just commend you guys and commend you to everybody here, because Tom Rayner was with us last night, and we weren't explicit about this, but there's probably nobody who has their finger on the North American church better than Tom Rayner. Literally, his organization, Church Answers, is connected with 2/3 of every church in North America. So imagine that. And here's what Tom Rayner said last night. His fourth point is evangelism is dead, and his fifth point is the local church does not have a sense of direction. You both have made choices, hard choices, so that your church has a very clear sense of direction. This is about being disciples and making disciples.
Yep.
And I just commend you both.
Thanks, Bobby.
Both for that. And it's got to start there. And
Yeah.
you've got a church and their leaders. That's where we have to start. Is we just have to say, a guy named Dan Spader calls it bleeders. We have to bleed. For us not to be about making disciples would be sin. Because of the conviction. Now again, you don't always impose that same sense of conviction on every other single person. Although I do say to myself, what other priority could you possibly have that would matter? But this is a crucial priority.
I'm curious, because for us that intentional decision to go, this is what we're about, we're not going to budge off of this, it has been incredibly difficult and incredibly painful in a lot of different ways. And when you're saying like it hasn't been easy, and there have been days where I'm going, are we making the right decision? Are we just totally blowing it? Are we off?
Yeah.
So it's not like you just go, this is the decision, and I'm never. But like that level of confidence wasn't there from day one.
Yeah. So let me just, and I want you to weigh in on this. When we made the decision, which is like over 10 years ago, that was the most incredibly painful thing.
Yeah.
So let's just name it for everybody. The number of people who said terrible things about me, and at the time we lost 1/3 of our people. And now I made a lot of mistakes, so I have to own my part in it. But I personally identify with your pain. Now I'm really super glad we made the decision.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the people, many who are here, who stayed with me and with us. But it was a very painful thing.
I think the truth for us is our process of clarity has taken longer. So I can't point to a day or even a month or a few months where we said, this is the old, this is the new. It sort of emerged in time. It started with the mission shift, which if you don't really understand that, then that's not going to create a sense of, then it went to this. So it's been painful, but it's been spread out over a longer period of time. So it's like, we're going to go Band-Aid, or you're going to go a little different. I usually favor the Band-Aid method, by the way, but
Yes.
that's just not where
Yes.
God led us in the time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So let's describe. So what we're saying is that the three of us, the three Roberts, have made a decision that Jesus wants us, that God wants us to make the core mission of our churches that we would be disciples who make disciples. So it's about, again, I just like the expression, our mission is to help people form their lives around Jesus Christ to the glory of the Father and the power of the Holy Spirit. But it's forming your life around Him to come to faith, and it's forming your life around Him. I love so many older Christians that I know that say, I'm learning every day. I'm becoming more like Jesus. Robert Coleman, who wrote the gold standard on Jesus-style disciple making, we were with him a few years ago. He's 92 years of age, and he's saying, I'm learning more about being a disciple and making disciples every day. Well, to me, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. So that specific clarity, which is absolutely essential, is in contradistinction to what?
Yeah, I think the opposite of that would be ambiguity. Is if you don't have clarity and just briefly mentioned this in the talk, if you don't have clarity, if you as the pastor, as the senior person, the senior leader, if you don't have clarity, nobody else will. And I'm grateful because I've had a team around me because I'm not always clear. So I've had a team around me go, what do you mean by that? What does that look like? Explain that to me. And to the point where it's almost annoying to me. But I've had a team around me and accountability around me to get me down to clarity so that we as a team, and it's not just me making all the decisions, we're making it as a team, but then we can take that to the next layer out, to the next layer out. If you can't do that, you'll make the wrong hiring decisions. You won't know how to develop your people. Like if you don't, good leadership starts with clarity.
Yeah. And you said a couple of things that are really important. You as the lead person on the staff or the lead person with the elders, you have to have crystal clarity, but you said something that saved you and it saved me, is that I have a team around me, like our staff, Doug Robertson, JP Robinson, Michelle Eagle, 3 people, I'll just name them, because I get off track too. And they go, wait, how does that relate to disciple making?
Yeah, or I thought we agreed to this, and now you're doing that. What does that have to do with what we agreed to back here?
So it's, the team has to have clarity.
Yes.
And you've described how you guys work through the clarity, the transparency. God bless you for being transparent with us, because we're all, stumbling and learning. But the transparency you said, I'm not sure that I know that, but these practices are going to help get us there.
Yeah. The transparent thing I didn't have time to say, but I want to say now is there was also something else going on in my heart where in this last 5-6 years, God has given me a greater love for Jesus. And that's happened in some interesting ways that would be hard for me to say this plus this plus this. But I just love Jesus more. Like I want to talk about Jesus. I've been a Christian for a long time, and I would have said I love Jesus, and I did love Jesus to an extent. But when you as a human being, when you fall in love with Jesus, when you see him new and fresh and different, that compels you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing, because we spend a lot of time on strategies and practices and all these things you guys have heard us talk about. But if the Spirit doesn't birth a love of Christ in our body, greater than the culture, greater than the country, greater than their family.
Yeah.
Now I'm touched on some of the idols of our time and place, right? If you don't love Jesus more than those, your mission will not be to help other people love Jesus, and it'll be other missions.
Yeah. So we talk, Robin, in fact, in your talk, you talked about the Attractional Church, okay? So let's talk about the challenge of the Attractional Church. So do either of you want to define it for us?
Define Attractional Church?
Yeah, actually, let me. I don't want to
you
kind
might
of
wanna
get
guide
you
us
to
on that
give
one.
me an answer when I already know the answer I want. Attractional Church is a church that is attracting people to a service on Sunday morning, and you want to draw people in, and what you want to be attractive is the preaching, the praise and worship, and the programs. I call my 3 Ps. And if we can attract them by the best preaching, the best praise and worship, and then the best programs, which means that you got to devote 90% of all your time, all your money, all your energy, everything the church is about, to producing this fantastic experience that'll just draw them in, and they'll say you're cool, you have the right kind of boots and the right kind of shirt, and it is awesome.
That's a good definition. Yeah.
We all know this.
Yep.
We're all very familiar with that tension.
Yeah.
But it is such a magnet. And we want to honor God, and we want to be perceived as doing a good job. And so up and to the right means more numbers, and more numbers is drawn to preaching, praise and worship, and programs, and it dazzles and it makes people feel good and that they have a good product.
Yeah, I think the danger, this is where we get into the conversation where just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. And so, like, to me, if the goal is to attract people to a 1-hour service once a week, and that's it, that's all we're doing.
Yeah.
That's the goal. All of our time, money, attention goes to that one thing, we're completely missing it. However, there is something to be said for meeting the culture where it is. So if Joe the plumber wakes up one day and says, you know what, I need God, and where am I going to go?
Right.
Probably one of the first things that's going to come to mind is I'm going to show up to a church on Sunday. But if you can view the Sunday service, it's important, the sacredness of preaching, of prayer, of gathering with the saints and worship. These are holy things that God has called us to do. But if the goal of getting people in the door then becomes, if your engine is discipleship,
yes,
then this is a way to funnel people into discipling relationships.
It becomes a funnel.
Yeah.
Because people in our culture, my experience is most people in our culture, they've been trained by our culture with church historical roots, all of that. When they want to explore spirituality, they think Sunday morning go and explain. So we're not saying do a terrible job,
right?
But we're saying don't. My mom and dad used to say don't put all your eggs in one basket, and it's the idea that what is the purpose on Sundays, and part of the thing I think we have to just be transparent about is you can do a good job. In our culture, you got to do a good job. But if you try to do a great job, you're not going to have enough energy for the discipling during the week. There's not enough time, money, and energy. Rob, do you want to speak to that?
I'll add, this was kind of a breakthrough for us, and I think this may be a helpful tool for some of you out there. It's what you said. We had someone that did some work with us, Will Mancini, who's an author and church consultant and some things, and he developed a model. He calls it lower room, upper room. And he says the lower room of your church is the reason why people come to your church, and it's those P's. I think he had a couple more, but it's basically what you just said, the preaching, the praise and worship.
And the
programming. I think he had the place and the people as well, but
yeah.
It was similar. So that you just have to acknowledge that, at least in our culture, that's why people will come.
Right.
People are not usually going to step in the door for a discipleship mission. But the upper room is your mission. The upper room is the vision. And that for us would be, our mission statement, helping people follow Jesus through these 4 practices, that kind of thing. The key is, how do you get people from the lower room to the upper room? What stairways can you build? What ladders can you build to get people up? So even in our assimilation class, every church has some kind of assimilation process, but we have a once a month class. We talk about lower room, upper room in that very step. He's like, we know you're here because you're drawn to this. Here's our mission. And Will says, your lower room is why people come. Your upper room will be why they stay.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's really good. So let's talk about the fact that before we move on to developing during the week, what I call sometimes Monday through Saturday, how the discipling, it's not just on Sundays. We talked a little bit about this last night too. Tim Keller talking about, the average person's their social media bubble 5 to 7 hours a day. There's no way that 1 hour Sunday is going to counteract that. Or Chris Harper had pointed out, it blew me away, that the average Gen Z listens to 4 to 6 hours of podcasts a day. Well, if you're doing that, the only way to counteract is to have a church that's Sunday through Saturday or Monday through Saturday plus Sundays. But before we get to talking more specifically about these things that you guys have done a fantastic job in laying out, the biggest shift I think we have to make is that approximately 80% of the people in the churches that are attractional churches, they're not growing because they're spiritual infants and spiritual children who want to be fed. And you're asking them, don't just be passive wanting to be fed. We want you to be active, engaged in the mission of Jesus. Talk to us about that. What are your reflections and thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the work that you're doing, Rob, around clarifying the practices that you want to help people employ in the rhythms of their life is huge, because again, you're clarifying for them this is what, when we say following Jesus, this is what we mean, right? When the scripture talks to following Jesus, this is what it means.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle change. It's not just saying, yeah, I prayed a prayer one time and now I can call it good and just wait till I die. It's life in the king. So after you say yes to Jesus, there's this whole life of following Jesus in the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing, the work that you guys are doing, is clarifying what those practices look like. So again, it's interesting. We can't skip that step of clarifying for our people.
That's right.
You know, the challenge then becomes is how do you invite people into that? Because there's a lot of barriers, like you're describing. I mean, the amount of time and attention and energy that people have to just give away is very little. So we're competing with like Jesus in the first century looks at his disciples and says, "You're going too fast. You got to slow down." That's in the first century, right? And so think about the pace of our culture now compared to first century. And so we've got a ton of people that are distracted, they're hurried, their lives are just filled with things. So to help people understand the importance of prioritizing the ways of Jesus, it is no easy task, and we don't have it figured out, you know.
So let's just talk about a couple of things. We've got just a few minutes left here, but one of the things I know that you guys are going to be clear on, and that I commend everybody, is get a very clear definition of a disciple. So if the goal of the church is not to draw people to how attractive we are, but the goal of the church is the product we produce as God works through us, and what does that disciple, that fruit-bearing disciple, look like? So we've landed on, we just use, Matthew 1:18, come follow me. I'm sorry, Matthew 4:19, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. It's following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, and has joined the mission of Jesus.
Yep, that's ours as well.
Awesome.
Yep.
So the idea of you get clarity on that, and then you try to get very specific with practices. What is it that we, as God grants us favor with people, what do we want them to be doing during the week to get there? And I saw in your 4 practices that each of those is leading to that as well. Mm-hmm. Speak to that.
Well, the thing we haven't talked about, which I want to say before we go, is most of what we've all said is what I'd call content. It's like, you're going to your values, our practices, even what you just said. But next, if use another C word because we're all preachers, what kind of container does life change happen in?
Yeah.
And that's where I know you love this. It's got to be a relationship.
Yeah.
The container has to be a relationship. So where we are right now, we're a small group-based church. I know many of you out there are. Some of you may be a Sunday school model, others. But what's the best container for discipleship to happen? And what we're realizing is it's not a typical small group.
Yeah,
so we're actually experimenting now with what we're calling micro groups, same gendered, 2 to 4, 2 to 5, like that kind of life on life as a container where this stuff comes through.
Amen, brother. We're
thought
the
I'd
same.
be like that.
In fact, I was about to say all 4 Robs, all 3 Roberts. Because go ahead, Rob Rogers, and because I know you love micro groups as well.
Yeah, so Greg Ogden's material essentials of Discipleship Essentials. So it was an incredibly helpful tool as a church planter in Washington State when we were pastoring out there. So a guy kind of took me under his wing and walked me through, and it was a group of 4 of us, 4 guys, got together for about 9 months, walked through this material together, and it was so healing for me in the middle of planting and doing the work. It was just a reminder of, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And so we implemented that tool in the church, and it changed our church. So it was the groups of 4.
Yeah, and that's what you're finding as well.
Yes.
So in our context, I worked some years ago with Reggie Campbell. They did this spiritual autobiography thing that they developed. And so we adopted that. We have this material, Trust and Follow Jesus, because we want people to be catechized to know the essentials. So it's called Trust and Follow Jesus, and it's the same thing. So it's typically 3 to 5 men, 3 to 5 women. And what it gets away from, just to commend to everybody what all 3 of us are saying, people have a concept around small groups where it's really fuzzy thinking about small groups. We want it to be about disciple making, and we can make them about disciple making. But oftentimes we have expectations of a small group size that we're going to get eyeball to eyeball and heart to heart. And the truth is, it's a little bit too big for that. Now, I think that small group sizes are important. But if you can get, it's like Jesus with Peter, James, and John.
Yep.
And it's what you're saying. It's that, it's where you really, it's really the real me with the real you.
Yeah.
Talking about Jesus, talking about your life and my life, and helping each other to follow him.
A typical small group, at least in our church, is going to be 5 to 7, 8 couples. We're actually saying, all right, what happens if we let the men form a micro group and the women form a micro group? They still have the broader context of their fellowship group. They meet with 2 or 3 times a month, that kind of thing too. So you can use a small group model to get there, but we're finding similar things about our small groups.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That we're all finding. Well, I don't know about you guys, but I could keep talking to these 2 men for a long time. I just want to tell you that I just respect you. I have an affection for both of you and what you're doing, and I'm glad that we're in this together.
Me too.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank
Glad
you
to
so
be.
much.
Thank you, Bobby.